The show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Welcome back to Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. Sterling Fox with you, along with Tony Juventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia. Our guest in studio is lawyer Paul Mendez from L'Esperance Mendez in downtown Vancouver. And Paul, we talked about the noisy neighbors just before going to the break. 101 complains that the kids above him or her in 201 are making too much noise. So we need to resolve this. You recommended, first and foremost, whenever there's a dispute or conflict between two individuals in any kind of strata context, the two individuals might want to have a chat about it first and foremost, because in many cases, that's it. You can, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that was bothering you. That might not happen, but got to give it a whirl. Okay, so that didn't work out. So now your advice would be to 101 to approach the Strata Council and make sure they enforce the noise bylaws that these kids in the unit above 101 are violating.
Correct.
Right.
And that would apply to any kind of noise. And I think one of the things that's very important, Sterling, is that I started with the premise that the noise was
excessive.
Nuisance.
Right.
And that is one of the things that a lot of owners need to get a handle on, is whether the noise that they're hearing constitutes a nuisance. Because most of the noise complaints that I do hear about, I would put in the category of non-nuisance noises.
Okay.
I can hear somebody walking upstairs.
Okay.
I can hear cupboard doors opening and closing, or chairs dragging next to dining room tables. Those are ordinary living noises, as are children playing, arguing, cooking, whatever it might be. So the question always is going to be is whether the noise unreasonably interferes with someone's enjoyment of their apartment.
Right.
And the courts tend to say that noise has to be at a very high threshold before a court will intervene. So I really sort of caution people when they are thinking about noise to do their homework and make sure that the noise they're talking about goes beyond ordinary living noises.
Right. Tony, what about the, and I know it sounds like an early surrender, and there's a principle at stake here, damn it, but what about, if this is going to go nowhere fast, all it's going to do is cost me a fortune in legal bills. The guy upstairs and his kids are now just unhappy with me, and as you say, I have to ride the elevator with these people. What about just moving? Why not contemplate hanging out the for sale sign and getting out of that situation if it appears, especially if I lose and somebody determines that the kids upstairs are just being kids? I may think they sound like an entire schoolyard, but to the judge or some arbitrator, hey, they're just being kids. Relax. So move.
Well, there's going to be normal noise in buildings. I think one of the difficulties that we have is when buildings are marketed, they're often targeted to specific communities, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So you will see buildings that are targeted that say adult-oriented, or it will say
family-friendly.
Family-friendly or seniors development.
Yes.
Right? Like we have, this is a lovely retirement community in, Greater Vancouver somewhere.
Yep.
They're larger units. They give you more space, larger doorways, walk-in tubs. All these things are there. And then you look at it, you move in, and the next thing you know, people have moved in with kids and pets and musical instruments, and you're thinking, what the heck is this all about? I thought I bought into a building that was going to be a seniors-oriented building. And in the marketing it says that, but when you actually look at the governance, the bylaws of the strata, it didn't say it at all. There were no age restrictions, and there was, and we have a number of those buildings just around the Greater Vancouver area where that's occurred. And so, what people thought their lifestyle was going to be is really not what it became.
So what happens there, Paul? What happens if I've just dropped $500,000 on an apartment in the sky, thinking that it's going to be a 45-plus building, which guarantees a certain, at least, adult environment, and all of a sudden the people next door to me have got some kids? This is not what I just dropped $500,000 on. This is nowhere near what I expected. So now what happens? Legally, to me, I was under the impression the marketeers sold me this as a grown-up building, which is going to be quiet, and the next-door neighbors have got kids. So now what?
Well, in the case of an age restriction building, if the strata was marketed and had an age restriction bylaw that prevented people from occupying with children, then that's a very clear-cut bylaw enforcement issue.
Sounds
no
like it.
No longer really a noise issue. So
Yeah.
that should be one that can be resolved with a letter to the strata, and if the council operates rationally and gets some legal advice on it, they too will see that they have an obligation to enforce the bylaws in that case. So I would be optimistic that a situation like that could be resolved with some good letter writing and discussions back and forth between the owner and the council.
Okay.
But the problem is these units don't have age restriction bylaws. When they're marketed, they're being marketed as adult-oriented or retirement community. No bylaws were filed. The marketing is disconnected to what's going to actually be about the property.
Now you know about bylaws, both of you. Could, as a consequence of the marketing program, could a strata, the first strata council to exist in that brand new building, could they not institute a bylaw which designates the building as, say, a 45-plus adult community, or are those bylaws not allowed?
Well, they are allowed, but the problem is that if the owner-developer intends on having age restrictions, they need to file those as part of the creation of the strata corporation. Strata plan, it's in the disclosure statement, they're going to do it, and then it's all marketed together. The disconnection is the marketing is saying this is an adult-oriented complex.
Right.
The developer never intended on filing age restriction bylaws. They're not in the bylaws. They're not in the disclosure statement. So people buy in without looking. It's just as important when you look at a new development to look at what the structure of the bylaws that have been filed by the developer do and don't say. Because up until the second AGM, you cannot pass any bylaws without a unanimous vote. So big problem, right?
And any bylaws that the strata does pass after this point, the current occupants are going to be grandfathered on an age restriction bylaw anyway.
Right.
So, you know, if in this scenario with the marketing age restriction but no actual age restriction bylaw, if this was still early days in the strata, I would probably also be counseling the person that if they did sell their unit, because let's say the noise is not a nuisance, but it's disturbing enough to them and it's not what they bargained for.
Right.
And they were to turn around and sell it, I would certainly put the developer on notice that any loss of market value that the person is going to suffer as a result of this sale should be for the account of the developer, because that's clearly a misrepresentation by the developer.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Building the person would be buying into.
But the other side of it is it's a great place for another family to move into, right? A family with kids will be used to the regular noises of kids upstairs. And so, you know, it's a lot of it is about lifestyle. And it does make a big difference.
You mentioned a water escape in our last segment, Paul. So let's move on to another example that Tony's brought with us today. A pipe breaks in a wall, and the Strata Corporation chooses to repair the damages as opposed to filing a claim. Several strata lot owners, after 6 months, are still without flooring, and they're demanding the Strata Corporation complete the repairs. So it sounds like that they have a position of strength, legally speaking, more than a leg to stand on, or do they, Paul?
They do in this respect. The Strata Corporation has a duty to ensure original fixtures installed by the developer, and that would extend to the flooring, and they certainly have a duty to repair and maintain the common property. So the type of claim that's referred to in this scenario there, I believe, is a claim on the Strata Corporation's insurance.
Okay.
So in this case, the Strata has elected to do some repairs, but it's moving rather slowly on making repairs to the flooring. So in that scenario, I would say to the owners, if a letter to the Strata is not going to achieve the desired results, then I think what you have to do is fix your own flooring and then take this Strata to small claims if they don't pay for the cost of those repairs.
Does that happen fairly often? Strata just dragging their heels, people get fed up and go, you know, all right, I'm going to just fix this, and you guys deal with the bill because you should have organized this repair in the first place.
That does actually happen quite often, and I will say it's not a conspiracy. It's more that strata councils are comprised of lay people. In many stratas, there are people who have full-time jobs.
Oh, sure.
And they're often called on to make very many decisions, especially in larger stratas. So some of that slow-moving or glacial pace of strata business can be put to that. In other cases, it's driven by not wanting to spend money, which I think is not really a justifiable or good faith reason to delay doing this type of work.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on this one, Tony? You've seen more than a few examples.
Well, the problem is we have a real rising issue on this area, and it's because insurance deductibles have climbed so high for many strata corporations.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're now looking at the $10,000 to $25,000 insurance deductible for water escape.
The deductible amount has to come out of what? Contingency funds?
It would come out of contingency, or the strata council can even special levy for it without a special general meeting, because the strata has to pay for it anyhow.
Right.
So it's the one time in the act that the strata council doesn't need a general meeting to create a special levy. But the problem with it is this is kind of a symptom of a deeper problem. And the deeper problem is strata corporations, as Paul said, these are volunteers. They have very limited time. The best use of their time would be to make the decision to make the one phone call, whether it's them or the property manager, to file an insurance claim, have an adjuster, and the restoration companies deal with it.
Right.
Because everything will get dealt with, from the walls being removed and the flooring and the spaces in between the units and all of the areas where you're going to have long-term problems of mold and deterioration of the building system. But the strata corporation thinks they're actually saving money, or they're reducing the future risk of insurance claims by doing stuff like this. And this is where it gets messy. I think we have 5 files in our office right now where strata corporations have called us, or owners have called us, over this exact issue, where the strata's decided we're going to try and control this and do it ourselves.
Right.
We're going to hire somebody that we know, somebody in the building, the president's brother or somebody to do the restoration, and we'll get it done. They do a substandard job, so the unit is never restored to what it is. They don't deal with the water that's trapped within cavities, within wall spaces and floor spaces.
The mold.
And the mold that then ensues.
Sure.
So you end up with long-term problems in the building. It ends up having a devaluing effect on the property when those things start to show up.
Of course.
And then, of course, you're stuck with all these conflicts. People are still living in their unit without flooring. We have some people who are up to 2 years with no flooring in their ground floor suites because the strata started these repairs and now have just at the point that they're dragging their heels. So you have an individual who's already disadvantaged, who is now having to say, how am I going to find money to go to court to get a court order to get the rest of this repaired, or come up with $5,000 to redo the carpeting and then turn around and sue them in small claims.
Okay, and Paul, suppose I go for Tony's option B. I fork over the cash and get the thing done by a pro who knows what he's doing, so it looks like it used to when I bought the place and moved in. So now I'm out $5,000 for something that shouldn't have cost me a dime. So I go to the next Strata Council meeting and drop that $5,000 bill on the president's table and say, it's your problem now. I'd like to be reimbursed, please. Is that going to end up in court, Paul?
I would say probably in a strata that is not handling this type of a claim through insurance because they believe that they're going to save money by doing that. I would expect that if an owner went and fixed their own flooring and then demanded the strata to pay for it, there'd be a strong possibility that it would end up in small
Is that
claims.
owner going to win, by the way, in your experience, in court?
I would say on this fact scenario, I would expect them to win.
Okay,
yes.
right.
Because there's a duty to insure there. There's not a duty to repair on the part of the strata, but there's a duty to insure. And so as long as the owner can satisfy the court that the cost that they put in was reasonable,
Oh yeah, right.
then I would expect them to get an order for that.
Interesting. And Tony, this does happen too, doesn't it?
Happens a lot. And it's an interesting thing because people say, well, it happens more with self-managed stratas than it does with stratas that are managed. I don't see that trend. I actually see it where it tends to happen is buildings that are older that are in crisis now.
Right.
That they haven't replaced their plumbing systems. They don't want another claim on the insurance. They're going to manage this themselves. And so it starts to become this snowball of tragedy for the strata corporation, that one claim results in costs that they can't pay for, which results in another problem. And rather than spending their money on maintaining and upgrading their buildings, they're spending their money on disasters one after the other.
Just before we go to break, you just mentioned a term that I'd like you to clarify, please. You talked about a strata council self-managing a complex versus having a property manager. What's the difference there?
Well, I think all strata corporations are basically self-managed.
Right.
Because the strata council still has to make the decisions of the corporation. They're the legal representatives of the corporation. But many strata corporations, and I would say most strata corporations over 50 units, hire a property manager, a strata manager, right? And for a strata manager relationship, what they've done is they've created an agency agreement with a company, a real estate a licensed company through the Real Estate Council, who will basically deal with most of the administration of the day-to-day business of the corporation.
Okay, all right. And if they're not going to go that route, it's because they feel it's just too small a strata to justify the cost of bringing in a professional outsider?
Maybe. They may have some very well-organized individuals on council who are prepared to take the time to manage. It could be a variety of reasons why they're not doing it, but mostly it's economics.
Interesting. Our guest is Paul Mendez from L'Esperance Mendez in Vancouver. We're talking conflict resolution, and there's lots more to come on this edition of Key Pacific's Talk About Strata.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.